We're now moving on to 6.0, which is the General Fund Operating Budget Public Hearing. We will now move to the third reading of the 2021-2022 proposed General Fund Operating Budget. After Mr. Salters gives his presentation, we will begin the public comment on the budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity this evening to review the third reading of the budget with you. I was just thinking about this budget earlier today, and I'm really excited. I think I've been here 26 years. I think this is probably one of the best budgets that I've seen. So I really appreciate the effort that our staff has put in to come up with this budget, and working with the board and your input and insight on suggestions and changes, and obviously the priorities that were set forth in the beginning. So we're really excited to bring this to you this evening. Obviously, the general fund budget is the operating budget for the district. It's a look at the revenues and expenditures for the day-to-day operations of the school system. And just reviewing, we've looked at these now multiple times, but our district mission and system commitments were the driving force in our development of the budget. And then our priorities for this budget cycle really were to reduce and maintain student-teacher ratios, the step increase for our staff, employee and retention recruitment strategies were very much of a focus in this budget, and we'll highlight a number of those for you as we go forward. And then other priorities, the ongoing support for our Lexington One Online Virtual Academy, or Learning Academy, looking at the continued development and expansion of our college center, planning for the relocation of Lexington Middle School to the replacement facility, and continued planning and work on our early childhood center development that will occur in the Gilbert and the Pelion communities in the future. So some considerations for third reading. There's a lot of stuff on that slide. Basically, what I'll tell you is the Senate and the House have moved the budget forward to the governor's desk now. And so we actually got some information late this afternoon from the State Department of Education about revenue allocations and other things that are based on the budget that was moved forward. The governor has a veto period, and then should he veto any of those items, the body will come back on the 29th to consider those vetoes. We're really pleased with the work that occurred in the House and Senate and the conference committees and so forth to get us to where we are, because it aligned with what we were doing moving forward. A number of those items, they're all now locked, but a number of items were locked prior to their conferencing because they agreed on them. The base student cost is up to $25.16 for this budget year. There's a $1,000 teacher salary increase. Teacher step increase was included. A 5% salary increase for bus drivers. That 5% is actually on the state's bus driver schedule. Okay, so we actually pay more than that schedule, but we're applying that 5% to our schedule. So our bus drivers will actually see a little bit more of an increase than the state schedule and what they would have expected from that standpoint. There's an included item there: teacher salary, employer contribution, fringe benefit. And then there's a 1% retirement contribution, employer retirement contribution, taking the employer portion from 21.8 to 22.81. And I would just highlight that we're paying 22.81% for each of our employees' retirement. That includes, you see there, a breakdown of 16.41 for retirement, optional incidental death of 0.15, and a retiree insurance surcharge of 6.25. Employee pays 9% on top of that. I don't know of another entity that pays, almost 23% for their employees' retirement plan. Most private corporations, you may get a 3% 401k match or 5%. So it's a significant contribution to our employees and a significant benefit for them. A number of the recruitment retention strategies that we suggested are moving forward. We're recommending to move forward, and these haven't changed since second reading. All of these were, either mirrored in the conference committees and the budget that moved to the governor, or we were able to provide the funding for them. So all employees will have a step increase. We provide the $1,000 increase per step on the salary schedules, the schedules you have in front of you. Our increases for bus drivers, they'll get a 5% increase and then a $1 per hour raise after that. And then we increase all support staff pay by $1 per hour. And we did it that way because that's an hourly schedule. And if you take the kind of the lowest full-time salary of 6 hours and 180 days, you end up with $1,080 increase. So each of our support staff that are hourly will actually, by doing that dollar, will benefit a little bit more than the salaried schedules. So it works out in their favor. Doing some other things where we're moving all the years of experience out on our salary schedules to 40 years, hoping to incentivize some of our more experienced employees to stay around. Again, speaks to retention. Modifying all the salary schedules to include a retention incentive every 5 years, so that at that 5-year time frame, you'll actually get your 6 pay for 2 years. We talked about this in each reading, but we're very interested in this concept and how it's going to move forward and keep employees around. You get close to that, 10th year, or maybe in some cases, 25th year, 30th year, and you may want to go ahead and hang it up, but you'll stay around for a couple more years because you're going to go ahead and get year 31 pay when you hit year 30, and you'll stay that way for 2 years. So really trying to incentivize those more experienced employees to stay around. We're also looking at our first year teachers. We're paying them at step 2 for the first 3 years. So we have a step 0, 1, and 2. So we're paying them like a third-year teacher for that first 3-year period. That coincides with their continuing contract accomplishment at that point. So, and after that third year, they would continue to matriculate on through the steps. So again, trying to, some districts pay what they call a sign-on bonus. But we feel like incentivizing those employees over that 3-year period will speak to them a little bit more, hopefully. We're aligning salary schedules for our nurses, social workers, OTs, PTs, career specialists, and board-certified behavior analysts to their educational degrees. Many of them have advanced degrees, bachelor's, master's degrees, and unlike our teaching staff, they are not necessarily haven't been paid for those credentials, and so we're aligning those with salary schedules. And then we're also increasing substitute pay, by category, which we've talked about. We haven't made any changes to those pay rates from second to third reading. Additional ongoing strategies in the budget. We've talked about these previously. Funding our national board stipend, $3,000. We're currently paying 275 national board supplements. Opportunities for ongoing graduate level coursework, providing texts for that work. We also pay for a variety of professional development opportunities for our staff, curriculum writing and camps, after school programs to earn additional pay. And then there are other stipends and supplements available that are listed there for you.
Mr. Shaltos, the augmented summer school program we're doing to help some of the learning deficits, is that going to come out of this fiscal year budget, or this will be attributed to next year's? So
actually the summer school funding that we're doing now is actually coming out of our ESSER money.
Oh, okay.
And so one thing we should point out with that is because of that funding coming available, we're able to pay the teacher's daily rate. which is another incentive to recruit teachers to do that work. Historically, we've had to limit that or cap that rate, but we're able to pay their daily rate, so that's helped staff those programs.
And that's been pretty easy to fill, Mr. Stacy? Has that been an issue, filling those positions this summer?
Summer school positions?
Well, I mean, it's not, well, it's sort of been an issue. They've struggled a little bit with it. I mean, people are tired, and that's the bottom line. But, I mean, I think they're filled, but they're pushing. We've had one teacher that the salary cap on the retirement thing hit her, and so she was going to lose her retirement if she continued to work. So we had to work through that process with the state and get a waiver for summer school so that she could make that happen. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle.
Taking a look at our 135-day average daily membership, you can see the historical trend that we've had. Going back to the late 80s, we averaged about 500 students a year increase. And interestingly, when the pandemic hit, 2020, 2021 was the first year we saw a decrease in that number. We're expecting that to bounce back. We were projecting 515 new students, and that's an interesting number right now with everything going on with the pandemic, with everything going on with our local real estate market, the construction market. It's if you've tried to buy a house in the Lexington community, it's a very difficult process. There are ongoing bidding wars. Houses will go on the market and have literally 15 to 20 offers. And so there's a lot of folks moving into the community, but housing is hard to come by. So, we're going to watch that very closely as we go forward this next year. But we are staffing for the 515. I think Ms. Henson maybe pointed this out in one of the previous meetings. The benefit of staffing at that level is if we don't achieve that 515, we end up impacting our student-teacher ratios positively because we have the staff to handle that number of students, and we're budgeting for that number.
Well, Mr. Salters, I got a email this past week from a friend who's she pulled her children out this year and enrolled them in Heathwood, and said that it was a positive experience, that actually they were very well prepared from Lexington One schools, and that they're looking forward to coming back in August. So I think that we will see a lot of our folks returning.
Sure.
We
anticipate some of that as well. Looking at our teacher ratios, you can see the history there. Over the past few years, the board has had an intentional effort to try to reduce those ratios. In 2020, 21, you can see they slipped a little bit. This current year, or this now past year, I guess we've had graduation, and so we're proposing the ratios in that far right column for this upcoming year, 21-1, first grade, kindergarten, and second grade, and then 23-1, really through the middle school, and then looking at 18-1 at the high school level. And that's really a staffing target because that number includes other staff that are not directly in classroom seeing students in that number. It's just really a way to staff the high schools because of the many moving parts in those schedules. But overall, we're looking to lower those ratios across the board. Taking a look as we look at our budget, our overall expenditure summary, and how we get to where we are. Showing this slide, this has not changed from second reading. We did have a change from first to second reading as we developed our LULA program, and so we have some FTE shifts from there, and those shifts actually went back out to our high schools and middle schools, so changing those numbers slightly. But you can see overall, we're looking at a total net of a 73.27 FTE addition, and carrying 3.5 positions in the pool. And typically those pool positions come into play early in the fall related to our special needs population. As they move in, we need to assign some staff to those positions. On the next slide, this summarizes our administrative and support staff changes. Again, this has not changed from second to third reading. We've talked about this briefly, but the supervisor nursing position, it has an asterisk there. That is not a general fund position, but we're showing that as information on this slide. We have a number of these positions that are formula driven. As we get to a certain staff and or student level at a school, we add an additional assistant in certain areas, and that's what's driving most of this work here. The administrator at Gilbert Middle School is one of those formula-driven things. When the Lula numbers actually shuffled out, they actually ended up having more enrollment in person that kicked them over, that required an additional assistant principal, and so we shifted an assistant principal from Lula over to that Gilbert Middle School slot. So again, 10 FTE total there. Some of the board members asked for some different ways to look at this in kind of a numeric number, if you will, from a FTE standpoint, instead of just a dollar figure. And so this is the way one way we've shown this representation is overall there's 3,641.23 general fund FTE that the previous dollar amounts are funding. And so you see the change there, the total FTE change of 83.27 in our proposed third reading budget. Another way to look at that is graphically, and unless you have really good eyes, you probably can't see it. I know I'm struggling from across the room. It is the same numbers, and what we did is we broke it out by central services and then the different divisions within central services and how many FTE are associated with that, and then schools, and we did elementary, middle, and high. We broke out our alternative education services and our Lexington Technology Center and then our Lula program and the FTE that are associated with those. And we broke it down at the school level by admin, certified, and support. And I will say this presentation will be online, and it's much easier to read when you can zoom in on your computer and get those numbers. But they do translate to, these numbers that are on this slide as well. But it does give you a sense of where the FTEs sit in the overall budget versus just a big dollar figure for our payroll. Again, summarizing some of the increases and or decreases in our budget. The step increase for all eligible employees, I mentioned that. The $1,000 increase for salaried employees, the $1 per hour for the support staff. You can see the different increases in their amounts there. The HR generalist position, that's a staffing change in our HR department where those positions are being shuffled around, duties reassigned. So that we end up as employees have one go-to person in our HR department, basically from beginning to end, from the hiring process all the way through the retirement process as well. So, additional, we have a reduction in supplements and temporary salaries, and so that's reflected. State mandated employer retirement, we've talked about that, and the health insurance increase, that's a state mandated increase there. And then there were some funding shortages from reading coaches, nurses, and career specialists that we're covering as part of this budget. I mentioned the substitute pay increases previously, and here's a look at those. Again, we aren't changing those proposed rates from second to third reading. Substitutes are very, very hard to come by. And to be competitive in that market with other districts, we feel it's very important to increase these rates as we go forward.
Is there equity with those rates with our full-time employees, or these rates are a premium above?
No, these would not be premium over our full-time employees.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. There's no incentive for you to be a sub and quit your full-time job.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's a great question. Looking at in general at our increases, I'm sorry.
Just real quick, but if it's a long-term sub, they are paid.
Yeah, that's a great point.
This-
So if we have a position where a teacher may go out on a long-term medical leave situation, we bring in another teacher that's certified, they assume that salary of that teacher. So they are paid at the, not that salary, they are paid at a commensurate salary to their certification level and experience. And so they wouldn't, if it's long-term, they wouldn't get the daily rate. Looking at programs and services increases, I provided you guys at second reading a detailed breakdown of these costs, and nothing has changed from second to third reading in our recommendations with these increases in programs and services. About $1.5 million. We have about $1.2 million in decreases to offset the increases that were in there. The major ones there are related to our insurance, workers' comp and property and casualty insurance premium negotiations that we were able to accomplish. So overall, it's just over $300,000 in increases in programs and services. Just taking a look at that summary. Again, no change from second to third reading. Total budget, $304,035,616 of expenditures, which reflects about a $6.7 million increase from the previous year. Just taking a look at how that breaks down in distribution of what we do, salaries and related costs. Obviously, we're a people business. Our number one resource and asset is our staff that interacts with children every day. And so that you would expect that's where our money goes, and that's reflected in this chart. 88.3% go to that, 7.1% to programs and services, and 4.5% utilities and maintenance to maintain our approximately 5.5 million square feet of physical plant across the district. Taking a quick look at our revenue summary, this is revenue and fiscal affairs summary of the base student cost, and what you see is kind of where it should be funded and where it has been funded. So you can see that consistent gap, and you date back to 2007. I think was the last year it was fully funded, which is reflected over here. So, it's not as bad as it has been. If you look at, 2010, 11, we have made some gains in the gap, but there is still a gap. And so we hope to continue to work to close that gap for the benefit of our students as we go forward. Some of the questions came up early on about our fund balance and how that was tracking. We provided this summary in the second reading, and nothing has changed at this point. We won't have a final fund balance closeout until in the fall when we've closed the books for July and everything's been processed through. It'll be probably August time frame where we'll know what we're looking like. But right now we're trending probably towards like a $7 to $9 million surplus in our fund balance as we go forward. So you see there the unassigned fund balance versus the total fund balance, and we have assigned portions of that, which are our prepaid items and any fund balance commitment that we make as part of the general fund revenue estimate, which I'll show you here in just a second. That's how you get those assigned portions of that balance. Looking at the projected revenues, we are anticipating about $104 million from local sources, $183 from state sources, and then transfers from other funds, about 8.8. The budget today did include an additional about $370,000 or so in aid to district, which is not reflected in this revenue. And that's a category which will allow us to transfer that money into the general fund. So what ultimately that will do is it will reduce this operational balance needed. We're showing about a 7.45 million fund balance usage. If that money comes through like the state's saying it will, we'll be able to lower that 7.45 to 7.1 or something like that. And so that's effectively how that would work. But you can see the revenue is the obviously your revenues and expenditures need to match, and we've done that here. Again, with about a $6.7 million anticipated increase in our overall revenue. Taking a look at our operating millage, just as a reminder, our taxpayers, homeowners don't pay property taxes for school operations, thanks to Act 388. So when you look at your tax bill, you do pay for debt service millage. There is a penny sales tax that also provides a credit on debt service side as well. But as a 4% property owner, you don't pay any operational millage. But businesses and manufacturing and so forth do. This is a chart that shows the millage limit increase. Act 388 set an increase threshold. And so for this year, we could go up 11.03 mils. We actually have a rollback provision as well that would allow us to go up. You can see another 37.85 mils if we chose to do that. And here's a calculation of what that looks like and what the value of a mill is worth and what revenue that would generate. So if we went up to 11.03 mils, it would generate approximately $3.4 million. And in this budget, we are not recommending any millage increase to balance the budget. So the business owners and 6% assessment and so forth would not see any operating millage increase as part of the budget. So with that, I give you our third reading. As I said, I'm really excited about the things that are included in here. I think it does a lot to support the needs of the district and the staff. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or go back and cover any additional material you're interested in.
Mr. Salters, are we pretty firm on holding to our student-teacher ratios that was presented? Is that?
Mr. Oswald, that's obviously our goal. And we're, as I said, we're staffed at the 515 growth factor. Should we exceed that growth factor, we may have some challenges. There's a lot of things that go into student-teacher ratios, as you know, being a former principal. If you have some resignations right at the beginning of the school year that you weren't expecting, and we have to kind of reshuffle some staff around, or if we can't find, we have some open positions, we can't find some staff, that has an impact as well. But certainly our commitment is to try to get those ratios at those targets for sure.
Those are the best ratios we've seen in a while, so
Yes,
kind of
sir.
want to stick to that if we can.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So just want to thank you and the team on working through the budget. So it's always a fun exercise, but an important one, and quite frankly, sets the tone for our next year. So I agree with you. I'm very excited after doing this 8 or 9 years on the board. It's an exciting budget, so thank you. I do this every year, but again, I would like to go on record and remind our local community that if the state legislature funded the district at the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs recommended level of $3,100 per student, and again, I appreciate the legislature funding us at $2,500, but if they had funded it at $3,100, it would be a net additional revenue to Lexington One of $16 million, which again, at $312,000 per mills would allow us to reduce the millage to our local community by 50 mills. So I know our business owners hopefully are hearing that and sharing that with their delegation. So.
One question about the LULA. Obviously, that's a kind of an interesting swing that we have seen throughout the budgeting process. How many employees did we originally start with in the LULA? It doesn't have to be an exact. I mean, I
think it was close to 39,
Yeah.
maybe 37.
Okay, so projected enrollment versus current enrollment, about cut in half.
It
roughly.
was 37 plus an administrator.
Right, okay. Yeah, you know, I guess I look at this and I see that, you know, obviously coming post-pandemic, everybody got a little taste of schooling at home, and then some kids really respond very well to it, and so there's been continued interest in the Lula. You know, when you see it cut in half, obviously it makes you kind of pause for a minute and say, well, you know, is this something that should continue? And I would say yes, because I think this is one of those situations where we swung so far one way, and now we're swinging very far the other way, you know, now getting back into school and plans for the fall. I think at the end of the day, we'll likely settle somewhere there in the middle in the upcoming years, and we'll probably have 400, 500, 600 students any given year who will want to participate in a Lula curriculum. And I think the more reps we can do with something, the better we're going to get with it. The product's going to get better, and it's going to get better. And so I still think there's a lot of value in doing that. And honestly, you know, 400, 500, 600 students, I mean, that starts to equal a school at some point. And so that's not a brick and mortar that we're having to come up with funding for and everything else. So I think there is a ton of value in the Lula program. And so, but certainly I don't think we should be scared by the numbers being cut, if you will, for that. Thank you for the employee listing, if you will, the organizational structure that we see with that. I kind of asked for that because I see that exactly what you're talking about. We are a people business. And so when 89% of our budget goes towards supporting salary, it's nice to see it laid out as to how that truly looks organizationally. And so that certainly helps that at the time we approve a budget, while we're not necessarily approving this organizational structure, that's what we're getting for the money we're spending, basically. So so thanks for certainly providing that.
But stay with the Lula. I guess the projected enrollment somewhere between 400 and 600 for this fall. Is that right? Or because y'all are basing the FTEs based upon the projected enrollment.
I think right now it's at 309.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So that's even, because even at 1 to 23, that's 437 students. So they're actually going to be staffed a little bit lower, right? Yeah, lower ratio.
So the way they're staffed, there's 10 FTE for middle school, and we're going to kind of do that sort of like a self-contained program for the most part. But at the high school, because there's so many different types of requests for that low number of students, we put that FTE back at the high school, and then we asked each high school to give up certain sections. So they may have a teacher at their school that teaches 2 sections of Biology 1 face-to-face, and then their third course is Biology 1 Lula. And so that kind of helps, because when, as a principal, and I'm scheduling the school, and I get a 1.0 FTE, I have to make a decision. Is it going to be English? Is it going to be math, science, or social studies? But if I have to give up a math teacher, I'm giving up a lot of sections of math. But if I only have to give up 2 sections of math, I can make that work better within my requirements to support Lula as a whole. So I think that goes to Dr. Guyton's point too. I think the more years you do that, the better you're going to get at it. And we've talked about the need for online learning programs outside of the regular school. Like right now, all our kids that are in Lula are taking all their courses online. But there is maybe some potential in the near future to offer like a physics class, because some of the smaller high schools might not have needed an AP physics because they didn't have enough people to take it. But across the board, you could support that AP physics class, which meets the needs of those kids in some of those smaller schools. And we might be able to do it more succinctly, more efficiently by being able to offer up just that one section. And Dr. Little's had some really good ideas as we've talked through some of that process moving forward for helping even more of our more advanced students get some of those upper end courses that we couldn't offer because we just didn't have the enrollment in the school. So I'm excited about the fact that we didn't do away with Lula, that we're going to continue to build that, and we hope over the next couple of years, really develop that into a new type of alternative school.
Board, are there any other questions for Mr. Salters before we move into the community participation part of the public hearing?
Well, I just have a comment. I just wanted to thank Mr. Salters and your team. I like a lot of these. I mentioned this last time. I just wanted to say it again since it's third reading. And I appreciate y'all including the board in the recruitment and retention, the priorities this year. And for the most part, I'm very satisfied with the budget. And Kyle, I thought I was the one who got those little organizational chart put in there. No, it was you. But anyway, I thank y'all for everything you did. Looks great. Thank you.
Thank you.